Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome back. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast. I'm Michael Barth. You know me already. This is Owner's Stories. Owner's Stories again today, an episode I always really enjoy doing. Not that I don't enjoy doing the episodes with Steve. I know you're listening, Steve. You know I like doing the episodes with you. But Owner's Stories are a little bit different because it's the episode where I get to connect and chat with Porsche owners around the world. Porsche owners who are sharing the passion. As I always say, PorscheCooled Owner Stories, was originally conceived by the fact that, we all have a different story. Every Porsche tells a different story, and each owner has a story to tell. That's what I wrote down in the very first owner stories that I did, which was with Nick way back last year. Today, as I've always said, the PorscheCooled Owner Stories is just about Porsche. And what I like about today's episode is Stephen is joining me from Australia. He's from Sydney. He's from my hometown. And Stephen doesn't have a 911, which is great because this is what Owner Stories is about. Like I said, it's just about the love of Porsche, the passion of Porsche. So that's probably about it for the intro. I know Stephen's going to be waiting because it's almost time for the podcast to start. Still recording these podcasts in London. This will be the last one I'll be doing in London, actually, because on Saturday I'm traveling back to Bahrain. So the future owner stories will be recorded out of Bahrain. I know there's quite a few, just before I get Stephen, actually, because I can see he's come online. There's a lot of people waiting to be on owner stories, and as I always say, I will get back to you. I'm a little bit slow at the moment in responding, and I apologize for that, but there's always a spot to tell your story. So like I said, if you want to be on these owner stories, all you need to do is just go to PorscheCooled, follow PorscheCooled on Instagram, just PorscheCooled one word, and just connect with me. Just send me a DM through there. You can also send it through my personal Instagram as well, which is michael.barth, but PorscheCooled is probably better. And I'll get back to you, and we'll talk about organizing a time and telling a story. Anyway, let's get Stephen on the line. Like I said, this is Owner Stories number 20. All these Owner Stories, as you know, are done through Zoom. Sometimes the sound is good, sometimes it's not so good. Hopefully today is one of those good days. All right, let's get Stephen, and I'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Owner Stories. Like I said, this is number... I don't know why I always forget these numbers, but I do. This is number 20. Number 20. I think I might have said 19 in the introduction before, so I'm going to have to change that. But it's number 20. Today we have Stephen, and Stephen's coming from Sydney in Australia, from my hometown. Hi, Stephen. How are you?
I'm very well, Michael. Thank you. How are you?
Very well. Very well. So I was just saying in the intro, I mean, the Owner Stories has always been about the passion for Porsche. And it just, coincidentally, I've never ever had anyone on the Owner Stories. Well, I've had people with the 356. I've had Mark from Melbourne, Mark and Cars, who's got the 356 and 912s. But I've never had anyone that hasn't had a 911. So that's why I was interested to get you on, because I know a lot of people, when they're searching for their car, are not necessarily searching for a first, Porsche, are not necessarily looking for a 911. So that's why I think your story is going to be interesting to the listeners today. But we'll get into that anyway. So owner stories, we always like to start it off, Stephen, with your first memory and your first memory of Porsche, if it was something that, a relative owned when you were a kid, if it was something you just used to see and wanted one, or is it something a lot of people, a few people have only started to look at them, later in life. So what is your first memory or first sort of thing about, wanting a Porsche?
Well, I think like a lot of listeners, my interest in cars sprang from my father. He was a real Anglophile. He had a series of British sports cars, MGs, Healeys, and so on. And one of his very good friends actually owned one of the first E-Type Jags to come into the country, a Series 1 3.8. And because of all of that, I guess, I wasn't particularly looking, or Porsche wasn't particularly on my radar. And then when I was at university, a friend of mine and I, we were riding our bikes from Sydney to Perth, and we took a detour through the Adelaide Hills. And I remember riding through the hills, and this what was a Python green 911 Targa just came up behind us and went past and went through the curves, and I just went, wow, what was that? That is my first memory of a Porsche. So that's what kind of got me going.
Okay, so then cars you've owned before. So you when did you start thinking then? When did you start thinking? So you see that green one that flies past you, the Targa. When did you start thinking that, I'm going to start looking at 911s, or I'm going to start looking at Porsches and start thinking, well, maybe I should get one? Was that reasonably recently, or was it a few years back now?
Look, it is a few years back in one sense, because then I had a couple more encounters, with Porsches. There was a fellow I worked with that had a 993, and he took me, for a spin in that. And that was very impressive. That was a beautiful car. And shortly after that, I was working with a consultant who had one of the first 996 GP3s. And he used to race Carrera Cup. So he had the Club Sport option with the roll bar and the safety harness and so on. And he took me out to Eastern Creek, literally drove it out, swapped the tyres out, put on a set of slicks, and we did quite a few hot laps. And I just remember coming down, the main straight at Eastern Creek, thinking, we're not going to go through turn one. We're not going to go through turn one. And this thing just carved through, and I thought it was just defying the laws of physics in some way. And once I'd had that experience, that was it. I thought, look, I've got to start looking for a Porsche. So for me, I started in earnest about 4 years ago, and I wanted a roadster. So that meant really that I was looking for a Boxster. So I spent about 2 years doing the research, finding out about all of the problems, of the early ones and the other things to look out for. And I was quite willing to look at a 987.2, but I really wanted a 981. And so this went on for a couple of years, I guess, researching, looking. I decided I wanted a manual. So in Australia, that means, less than 10% is sold with manuals. And so I had to set up the searches on car sales, and that's how I started to do it.
So going back a little bit, so you wanted a roadster, you wanted a convertible, you wanted, did you think about the 911 Cabriolet? Did you think about a Cabriolet? Or did you think about, a 996 Cabriolet? I'm trying to think of something in the same sort of price range. Did you think about a 911 Cabriolet in some sort? Or were you, the Boxster was mainly the one on your radar?
Look, I wanted to get a low kilometre, late model 981 if I could, because my view was that I was going to keep it for some time. So I felt that rather than get a relatively high mileage 911, I preferred to get a low mileage 981, which was newer, and I thought that would suit my purposes better. Okay,
so when someone's coming into Porsche for the first time, I guess you look at you're looking at budget. Most people are about budget, and most people are about do I want a 911 or do I want a Boxster? And it's a classic choice of which one you're going to go for. You're going to go for a cheap 996, or you're going to go for a 986 Boxster or something like that. You said you wanted to go straight to the 981, right? So the 981 is from what year again? From 2012, is it?
2012 through to 2016, I think. Yeah.
2016, which is the pick of that model, right? So did you consider the 986 or the 987? I mean, was there a reason why you overlooked the 986 and 987? Was it due to the potential engine issues, or was there another reason?
The 986 has the widely publicised issues, and so did the 987.1. So I was prepared to consider a 987.2, and in fact, I got to the point where I was pretty serious about getting a 987.2 because manual 981s just weren't coming up. So I did spot one, and I went ahead, made inquiries. It was in Melbourne. I was in Sydney. We got to the point where the fellow did a PPI for me, and a few issues came back. It needed new brake rotors, brake pads, and so on. And he wasn't prepared to take that into account.
Oh, okay.
So we got to the point, I paid the $500 for the PPI, but he wasn't willing to negotiate. So I just went, look, I think I'll leave it. And I really wanted a 981 anyway. And so the search continued. So, yes, I did consider a 987, but it didn't work out.
So I guess it's a bad seller experience, isn't it? It's not just about the car, because if the guy was willing to negotiate with you and to reduce the price slightly because of those issues that showed up in a PPI, which we all know is the benefit of doing a PPI, then you may have put yourself into that 987.2. But it is all about the seller, isn't it? And the seller just didn't want to cooperate, which is very strange actually, because those problems are not going to go away with that car. So the next person that comes along and does a PPI, the same problems are going to exist, aren't they? So
That's right.
it's you have to be a little bit more sort of transparent as a seller when you're selling a car, that you actually are willing to negotiate when issues like that come up. Of course, PPI, as we all know, it shows up little things that aren't that important as well. But if it's a major thing like that and it's a major cost, which those things would have been, there has to be some negotiating, that's for sure. So,
okay.
So your search. So you did a PPI on that. You spent some money already. So the cost of the car is going up because you've already spent PPI on a 987.2. So then you keep your search up. You decide, okay, I definitely want something new, or I don't want those problems associated with the 986, 987. So how long did it take you then to find the 981?
Probably close to 2 years, because it's interesting. I think I was fairly flexible in terms of the options and the colour and so on. But then I was walking around my local area, and this Guards Red 981 came through a few corners, and I thought, that just looks great. And at that point onwards, I thought, silver's okay. White I wasn't particularly keen about, although it does look great in the 911. The black I didn't want because in the middle of summer here, I just thought it would get too hot. Plus it shows all of the imperfections. And so I made up my mind then that I wanted a Guards Red 981 manual. And so when you put those two specifications together, the probability of either is fairly low. And in combination, it makes it there are very few. So look, it took me nearly 2 years before a low kilometre Guards Red manual 981 came up.
Yeah, I can understand that actually, because I know when you search even GTS Boxsters or even manuals now in the 986 are getting harder. 986 Boxster S's. If you do a search on car sales, I know that there's less and less showing up every day in the Boxster, because obviously people are picking up the cheaper ones, and they want the S. And I guess Boxsters and 718s were mainly spec'd in PDK, in automatic, in general, wouldn't they?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've done some research online here to try and find out the proportion of Boxsters and Caymans that were manual. And the best data I've got says about 8 or 9% of the Australian delivered 981 Boxsters and Caymans were manual. So very low proportion.
See, I kind of find it surprising, and then I don't, because, I guess but the Boxster is such a great driver's car, you know what I mean? The mid-engine layout and the fact that it is in a manual just makes it that, it really does make it that little bit better, doesn't it? It just makes it, more driver-focused. And it's surprising that they are all PDKs or they are all automatics. So 2 years, that's a long search. So did any come up? I don't feel so bad now when I'm looking for cars myself and I take so long, Stephen. So thank you for making me feel better.
That's okay. Yeah.
So when you did did potential ones come up during the 2 years though? Were there ones that came up that you thought maybe they're okay, or you just wanted to hold out for that red manual?
Look, I just wanted to hold out for the red manual, and at that point, I didn't really mind whether it was an S or a 2.7. They were the minimum requirements that I had, and so I just held out until one came up.
So when the car came up, and we'll get into, you can tell the listeners what you bought, but when the car came up, so you were prepared, you were ready, you had the cash, you had the funds ready, obviously, because you've been looking for a few years, so you could sort of act pretty quickly. So what was the car at a dealer? Was it a private sale? Where did you find the car?
I found it at a dealer. I found it at the Porsche Centre in Melbourne. Okay. And it only had 24,000 K on it, which is about 15,000 miles. So it was very low kilometre. It was in as-new condition. The benefit of it being at the Porsche Centre, of course, was that it already had the PPI, it had the warranty, it had roadside assist, it had all of that. And so I jumped on the phone and rang the dealer, and the fellow there said, "Look, terribly sorry, but a guy rang me 30 minutes ago, and he's already expressed strong interest in it. He's given me a deposit."
Oh, okay.
So, after all of that time, I felt very deflated. I thought, wow, what a shame. That was the car. What a shame. That was the car for me. Anyway, so a few days later, the dealer rang me back and said, "Look, you're still interested?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Because the other guy didn't come through." So we started the process again, and I ended up being able to get that car. So
how long? When was this, Stephen? How long ago did you purchase a car?
This was in 2018.
2018. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell the listeners what you bought. Tell them what you bought and the options that came on your car.
Okay, so it is a 2014 Boxster manual 2.7. The options that it had the 19-inch sport wheels, which I was very, very happy about. It looks great. The other options were pretty minor. It had the sport steering wheel. Again, I was very, very happy about that, because the standard steering wheel in that model Boxster, I just think it looks ugly.
Which one is that? Which one is it, Stephen? I can't think of what it is. What's the standard? So the one you have is the aluminium type wheel, is it? Or the?
That's right. So it's got the kind of polished stainless steel look 3-spoke wheel.
Oh, okay.
The standard one is some sort of plastic, I guess, and it's moulded and the spokes are quite thick. And to me, I've just never liked it, and I like it even less when it's covered with buttons. So that was great. Sport steering wheel, sport wheels. It had the colour centre wheel crest, which is nothing really, but it just
it's important.
Kind of sets it
it's
off.
Important, yes.
And yeah. and that's it really. It didn't have sport chrono. It didn't have the PSC, for example, but at the time I was thinking, look, they're the sort of things that I knew that I could add later. That was my understanding.
And I think the sport chrono anyway, I mean, if it was a PDK, I guess it's important, but I don't think you really need the sport chrono in a manual, do you? I mean, it wouldn't be an important option, I don't think, for me if I was looking for a 981.
Exactly. So I wasn't particularly fussed, to be honest. I think the only thing you get apart from the clock and the Sport Plus button are a few extra screens in the TFT display. I think there's a G-force display and I think there's a gear shift assist, but I could do without all of those. So it's not as important on the manual as it is on the PDK. I agree.
Can you get, because I know for my 997, and I think someone else mentioned it to me, you can actually get the sport button fitted by Porsche, which is just a map, which is basically the part of the thing that came with the chrono pack. Is that an option for the Boxster?
It does have the sport button, but with the chrono pack you get the sport plus. So
okay.
I'm not quite sure what it does. But
Right.
the sport button does come standard, and it does sharpen up the throttle response a little bit. So I do have the sport mode.
Okay.
I have actually since found out that I did contact Porsche Centre here, and you cannot actually retrofit the Sport Chrono package to the 981 Boxster, which I was kind of surprised about. But you can retrofit the Porsche Sport exhaust, of course, if you wanted to do that.
It's very expensive.
Look, I got a price on it again just last week, and it's ridiculous. It's in Australian dollars. The recommended retail is over $5,000. And they were willing to, give it to me for 4,700. But honestly, I just
Is that installed though? Was that installed, or that was just the part?
No, that's completely installed. You installed all the wiring, all the parts, everything. So drive in, $4,700 later, you drive out with it installed.
Yeah, it's a lot. I know it takes quite a few hours to fit that because of the switch and everything, the switch button, right? So it does actually take quite a while.
Yeah.
So when you found the car, so let's just go back though, because we just jumped a step. So you found the car in Melbourne. Do you fly down from Sydney to Melbourne and check out the car, or do you trust the Porsche Centre in Melbourne to give you all the right information? What did you do next?
Look, I didn't fly down. I thought that, look, it's a Porsche Centre. I've got the warranty. It's had the PPI. I got them to email up to me the service history of the car, the brake fluid changes, all of the services, the results of the inspection. And so I just felt at that time that I would just have to trust them. And that's what I did. I was on holidays at the time as well, so I wasn't really able to jump onto a plane and go down and abandon my wife up at my friend's place. So I just trusted it.
So the car you found, was a one-owner car?
Yes, it was.
It was a one-owner car. And was there anything? Yeah. So it had a good service history. It had low kilometers, like you said. It had the Porsche warranty, which is a 2-year warranty. Is it, or 1-year warranty? I can't remember.
It was a 1-year warranty at that stage. Yeah.
Okay, 1-year warranty. So was there anything that was still flagged that came up that you would have that had to be fixed under warranty before they sent the car out to you, or was it perfect?
It was absolutely perfect, and the other advantage of it was that they fitted 4 brand new N-spec tyres. They did a service on it, and so there was absolutely nothing to spend as well. So it was in as new condition.
Right. So then Porsche Melbourne organised the shipping, so you get it sent to Sydney.
Yep.
And when the car arrives,
right.
What was your first impression when you saw it?
Look, I thought it was everything that I'd hoped for. I mean, it was there in the showroom. It looked absolutely beautiful. So I was very, very happy with it.
So what did they do? Porsche Melbourne deliver it to Porsche Sydney and you pick it up from there, or it's sent to your house? How does it? It goes to Porsche Sydney, does it?
So it went to Porsche Sydney. The registration had to be changed, of course, because it was a Victorian car. And I took the opportunity. I was very, very lucky to get some plates for it. So I got the red and white 981 POR plates, which I couldn't believe were still available. So when I went to pick it up, Porsche Sydney had done all the registration. They'd fitted the plates, and it was ready for me to drive out the door.
It's quite surprising about vanity plates, or whatever they're called, custom plates as we call them in Australia, that you think the one you want is going to be gone, and it isn't gone, which is always a surprising. I mean, I was talking not that long ago to one of the listeners in Melbourne who wanted some input on what sort of plate to get, and I gave him a couple of options, and I checked on Victoria's number plate site for him, and I was surprised that these plates were actually available. You know what I mean? Like they're just, if you do the search, you can actually still get a good plate. The other day my car has got P997 as the plate, and And there's other ones available for other generations with the same format. They're still available. People haven't taken them, which I find quite surprising that they're not being taken already. So you've had the car now you've had the car for 2 years. So during those 2 years of ownership, and this is what the listeners like to hear about, there's someone listening to the podcast who's thinking, well, I want to get a Boxster as well. I didn't want to get a 911. I'm looking at Boxsters. So in the 991, have there been any issues? And you've got a warranty, and I guess you've extended that warranty as well. Are there any issues that have come up with the Boxster in that period?
There have been. I did a lot of research, and I think the general consensus on the forums and so on was that it was pretty sound mechanically. There was nothing notable to look out for. But I took the delivery of it. I very, very rarely, turn the radio on or play music because I just love the sound of the engine. And I thought before the warranty was about to expire, I'd just check absolutely everything. So I put a CD into the PCM and it played and it wouldn't eject, So I thought, okay, I tried this repeatedly over about a week or so. So I thought, look, it's under warranty. I'll mention this to the Porsche dealer and took it in. And, of course, as soon as they tried it, the CD ejected. It's uncanny how that happens. Yeah. But I think, they put their PWIS tester on it and it logs all sorts of data. And they said, look, no problem at all. We can see that this has had issues. And I said, okay, so what's the remedy? And they said, we'll just replace the entire PCM. So
that's good.
I couldn't be happier because I think that was probably about $5,000 worth. I'm not sure exactly.
I was going to say about $6,000 or $7,000, at least for the whole PCM.
That's right. So for something that I really used, I thought that was pretty good value. And I have had one other issue, and I'm pretty meticulous when it comes to cleaning and detailing and so on. And about 2 weeks before I was taking it in for a service, which was 2 weeks before the warranty expired, I noticed on the soft top there were two very, very light marks, symmetric on each side of the canopy. And it looked like something had been rubbing it. Now, I'd cleaned this car many times, over the time I had it, and I'd never noticed them before. Anyway, so when I took it in to the dealer, I said, look, there's probably nothing, but there's a couple of small marks on the canopy. Can you have a look at it? And they said, yeah, we've never seen this before. It turns out that when the canopy was being retracted, it was just touching the bodywork ever so slightly, as it was folding down into the retracted position. And they told me this. And I said, well, surely that's a matter of a simple adjustment. It must be some way of taking up some slack in the roof frame or something. And they said, there's absolutely no adjustment. We can't do anything to fix this. So I said, look, if this continues, it's likely to become a problem a bit further down the track when the vehicle's out of warranty. I really would like it attended to now. So they got a brand new soft top, which again I think was maybe $7,000, something like that. They got their upholsterer and they replaced the whole thing under warranty completely. So it's now actually got a brand new soft top. So I was curious to find out what was causing this problem. And they said that I haven't seen this because you don't get the replaced part back. They keep it so that it's not reused or sold secondhand. But apparently there was a small tear that had developed somewhere in the top, and that had just let a little bit of tension off. And so instead of it being pulled completely tightly over the roof frame, it was just a little bit loose. But
so they fixed that. So that's been fixed with the new top. It's not going to do the same thing.
Absolutely. So they've never seen this before. I've never heard of any of these issues on any of the forums, Renlist or Planet 9 or the owners' groups. And so as far as I'm aware, it's a complete one-off. So I wouldn't suggest to any other people, thinking of buying a Boxster, that this might be an issue. It certainly doesn't appear to be.
So the PCM replacement and the top replacement all happened in the first year then, the first year of your warranty. So you had 1 year warranty
right.
only. Did you extend your warranty?
I didn't, because, again, I thought, well, there are no real issues known with these cars. I think they've got a very, very good reputation. And I think, the warranty is, the way I look at it, it's insurance. And really, insurance is there in case you can't pay for it yourself. And so when I weighed all of this up, I thought, there's a couple of grand for another 2 years of warranty. I can't anticipate any further issues on a low mileage vehicle.
Yeah.
So I just took the decision not to extend the warranty.
Going back to the replacement top. The replacement top was done in Porsche, or they had to send it out to someone else to replace? It was a factory part. You said that they replaced it with a factory part, but was it done by them at Porsche Sydney, or was it done by somebody else?
I believe it was done at Porsche Sydney. I mean, I don't know for certain, but it was a factory part.
Yeah. The reason why I ask is I read an article on Porsche's website actually, and it was about a 986. It's about the 986 Boxster and about someone who bought a 986 Boxster and who was searching for one. It was just a story about buying the new Boxster Classic, basically talking about it like a classic car, and they had to replace the top. And they said that the problem with the tops is that the Porsche dealers with the older ones have problems fitting them. So in Germany, Porsche recommends that they go to, I think it was a saddle maker. It was a saddlery or saddle maker where they actually go and get the top replaced by this company. And I'm guessing that's because it's an old Boxster. It's not a new one like yours. So I guess the newer ones are different. Yeah. Maybe it's the way they're constructed. But I thought that was quite interesting that Porsche actually directed this person to a saddle maker. And this person was in Germany, so it was a bit different, to get the top replaced on the Boxster. So I thought that was quite interesting. So, okay, so you had it's a newer car, so nothing. So in the past year after the warranty's run out, Stephen, there's been no other issues with the car. It's been a very reliable car.
Absolutely. It hasn't got a rattle. It hasn't got a squeak. It's beautiful. So no other issues.
So are there any things that you are planning to do to it? Are there, you talked about the exhaust before, and you got the price for the Porsche Sports exhaust, and it's quite expensive.
Yeah.
Are you still thinking, I want to do the exhaust, or I want to do something else? Is there anything on your list of options or upgrades that you want to do over the next, couple of years?
Look, I have done a few relatively minor upgrades, I guess.
Okay.
One of the things I did was to it's interesting, actually, it has this wind blocker, which is a screen, which is kind of a mesh. I don't know whether you're familiar with it, Michael.
Yeah, I am. Does it work?
It's extremely effective at providing a calm cabin, but it does reduce the rear visibility, particularly at night. And so one of the things I did was I got a clear wind blocker screen from Suncoast.
Okay.
It just popped in, it fits perfectly, and it's just made such a difference to the visibility. So I did that.
That's an OEM part, the clear one? That's a Porsche part? It's not.
Yeah, I believe that it's not. I think it's actually made by a third party, and it's just supplied through Suncoast. So it's not an official Porsche part.
It's surprising that Porsche would make that, because you're right. I didn't even think about that. That mesh that comes up, because you sit so low in the Boxster as well, don't you? You're sitting quite low.
Yeah.
And you would actually, that would be a little bit hard for visibility with the blocker up. So it's a clear part, and it was just a pull out, slip in sort of fitment, was it?
Absolutely. So the old one just clicked out, the new one clicked in, the fit was perfect, and it was just it's a small thing, but it makes a difference, to the driving experience.
True.
So the other things I've done, look, I never really liked the look of the exhaust tailpipe on the base Boxster. It kind of, to me, looks like an appliance fitting from a vacuum cleaner or something. You know, that.
What shape
that kind
is
of
the
oval
exhaust
shape.
on yours, Stephen? I'm just trying to remember.
It's kind of an oval shape on the base one, whereas the S model has got the two separate pipes.
Oh, that's right.
And so again, you know, just from an aesthetic point of view, I investigated, you know, the genuine Porsche sport tailpipes, and they, of course, had a premium. And I bought a Fab Speed tailpipe for it, which is beautifully made. I think it actually flows a little bit better. Not you'd notice it, but it's got instead of the T junction where the exhaust comes out of each muffler, it's got a curved path that comes out to the tailpipe. Very, very well made, very straightforward. So I've put that on it. I'm not trying to make it look like a sport model because I'm not kind of into that. I just liked the look of it. The other thing I think
the sport tips. I think the sport tips. Sorry to interrupt. I think the sport tips are important. I mean, my car has them. My car has them as well. And you're right about the Porsche part. You know, this is where you have to really be clever with parts, because I think at the time when Autohouse Hamilton when I had my Fister exhaust put on, they had to replace the sport tips, and they couldn't get the old ones off. It was going to be too much of a hassle because they were welded on solidly onto the other exhaust for some reason. So they gave me a quote, and one quote was for the Porsche part and one quote was for the Danks part. And I think it was like 50% less. You know, the price for the Porsche part. I mean, the price for the Danks wasn't cheap. It was expensive. But it was like the Porsche price was, you know, nearing, I think it was $1,500 or something for just sport tips, which was just insane amount of money. Yeah. All right, so what else have you done?
Just other minor things, you know. I couldn't resist. I bought the aluminium look petrol cap, you know, which you only see whenever you open.
No, that's very important. That's very important, Stephen. I bought the same thing. It's very important.
Did you?
Yeah.
So I got that from Suncoast at the same time I got the clear blocker, and you know, just whenever you pop the cap and you see it there, it just looks better than a nondescript piece of black plastic.
And the thing is, to the listeners, I'll just explain to the listeners. The reason why when you're in Australia and you buy from Suncoast is because Suncoast prices, even with shipping, do tend to be, for some things, for most things, a lot cheaper. And this is Suncoast parts in the US. It actually is a lot cheaper than buying things in Australia. I purchased my air conditioning unit from them for my 997, Stephen, because it was, you know, the buttons were all gone, and I did the stupid thing and I just replaced the whole unit. But, you know, some things, like the price is, you know, 30 to 40% cheaper. I mean, some things are close, but some things are 30 to 40% cheaper. So what else?
Yeah. And the only other thing I've done was I got the centre armrest, you know, with the Porsche crest put on it, just to, you know, just to make it a little bit special as well. So really, apart from the clear wind blocker, the other three things have been purely cosmetic, you know, just part of owning your car and trying to make it a little bit unique.
But the thing is, those little things, and I've bought, you know, the similar things. I've bought the same things as you pretty much, and those little things are very important. Like I love my my Porsche Crest armrest in my car now. It was so much better than the plain one. Do you know what I mean? Like it's it's probably a little bit, you know, it's not cheap. They're not cheap parts, those sort of parts, but they do make a big difference. And you know, so many people tell me that they bought the petrol cap, the aluminium look petrol cap, because it really is you know, every time you fill up with fuel, it just, I don't know, it does make you feel that little bit better, doesn't it? I don't know why, but it just makes you feel like special. It feels special.
Look, it does, you know, and you have to ask yourself, really, you know, why don't they just put it on standard? But I guess we know the answer to that. Why put it on standard when you can get people to pay quite a lot of money?
Exactly. And if you go onto the 992 configurator even now, you know, that aluminium petrol cap is an option. It's it's there as an option that you can spec from new. But you're right, it should be just a standard thing. So anything else you want to do to the car? So you've done those few cosmetic things, which we all do, which all make us feel that little bit better. And it's just about the process of making the car your own, really, isn't it? It's just about making the car feel, like it's yours. Is there anything else you'd like to
do? Look, I've toyed with the idea of doing some sort of a tune, the FB Brombacher or Softronics or something, but I'm kind of ambivalent about that because, you might get 10% extra performance, but is it really worth it? I don't know. But no, look, I'm just really happy with it now, Michael. It does what I want. It does it really well. I enjoy driving it. In terms of the overall performance, I think performance is a multi-dimensional thing. You've got the straight line performance, but then you've also got the braking and the cornering performance. So I think when people talk about performance upgrades, they naturally think about getting a little bit more power out of it. But I think that's
what is the one that people get for the 981. For the Boxster, what is the pick that when you're reading through the forums that people do to get that little bit of extra power?
Look, there seem to be 2 or 3 very, very reputable tunes available. There's an independent guy here in one of the southern suburbs of Sydney that used to actually work, and I think he was the service manager at Porsche Centre Sydney South for 20 years or so.
Oh, okay.
And when I was talking to him, Paul's his name, I said, look, what's the story with the tunes, Paul? He said, we go with Softronic. And he says that they're a very good product. And, they're favourably reviewed, but there are a number of them. And they all seem to be pretty good from what I can see. I haven't read a done review about any of them. I think, you get it tuned to your particular fuel, country, engine displacement, whether you've got any exhaust mods or whatever.
So it's just it's just a map, is it? It's just a mapping program. Is that what it is?
Yeah. That's exactly right. So,
and what sort of price would you have to pay if you were doing that for your Boxster? Is it expensive? Did you actually look into it that far or not?
Look, it's around about $1,500 Australian, around about $1,000.
Okay. That's not too bad.
US. It's not too bad, but I guess when you look at, the price per horsepower or foot-pound of torque or newton metre, it's fairly expensive, So I'm inclined just to leave it, to be honest, and leave it fairly standard. So at this stage, I'm not really thinking of doing many more modifications.
I guess, like you said, power. The thing about the Boxster is it's so well balanced, and it's so good in the twisties, and it's so good, as a car in how it comes from the factory. You know what I mean? Whether it be an S or whether it be a standard, it doesn't matter. And I guess when you first got the car and you took it out for that first drive, was it everything you expected when you took it out and you took it for the first, wherever you went in Sydney down to the national park or north or somewhere? How did it feel?
Look, when I drove it out of the dealer, it was middle of winter, a rainy night, dark.
The worst time to pick up a car.
I hadn't set everything up, the seat, the steering wheel, the mirrors. I'd done it roughly, but it was a very, very nervous drive. I had to drive into the city and pick my wife up after work, and I just felt really uncomfortable, paranoid going through peak hour traffic on a rainy night, and the visibility with the roof up, it's not that bad. But I tell you what, in dense traffic, it's not that great either. So my first drive, I was a bit nervous, but after that, when we do go down through the national park very, very regularly, we get up at dawn on a Sunday morning, and head out of town and go down through the twisties. And that's when it just feels great,
Yeah.
That's when you really get rewarded by the balance, of the Boxster. So
I really enjoy that drive. Actually, that's one of the things I miss about Sydney. I really enjoy that. I mean, going north is okay, but I really enjoy that drive through the national park and going a little bit further and stopping at the Scarborough Hotel, which is on the way down there, and it's just such a great drive, and especially like you said, if you get up early enough in the morning. But I think you're right. When you pick up your car for the first time, and I know I felt exactly the same. When I picked it up, it was in Woolloomooloo in Sydney, so it was quite close to where I actually live. But it was, it's just a nerve-wracking experience because it's the first time you've really driven the car apart from the test drive for me. And mine wasn't in rain and it wasn't in that heavy traffic. It was actually really okay. So I can feel how you were feeling then in that situation. It would be a bit scary, not so good.
I think it was.
So now you've got the Boxster. Have you thought about other Porsches? Have you thought about you would like to get something else, or is this enough for you?
It's. You get on the Porsche slide, I guess, and you can't help but think about other models. So I have thought about others, but in the end, this does everything that I want, and an important part of this, as well as being just such a great driving experience, my wife really loves it. And it's funny, because when we go for our drives through the Royal National Park, we put the top down, you hear the birds, you can smell everything, you smell the bush. She says it's like going for a bushwalk without the effort. And it's very much like that. So the seats in it are great too. We've done a couple of 9-hour day trips. And we've got out at the end and we felt just as good as we did when we started. So at the moment, I'm very, very content with it, Michael. It's just a great car to drive. It's designed as a roadster from its inception. The mid-engine, as you know, it just means it's beautifully balanced. The whole driving experience is just fantastic. So I'm very happy for the time being.
Oh, that's great. Does your wife drive the car? Does she drive manual?
She can drive a manual, and despite me offering, for her to drive it, she's quite happy just to sit back and be a passenger for the time being. But she can drive a manual, but she hasn't driven it as yet.
It's funny when you buy a Porsche, whether it be a Boxster or whether it be a 911. Like, I've offered for my brothers to drive my car on numerous occasions, and they always decline because they don't own that sort of car, so they feel like it's a bit nerve-wracking for people to drive it. I think that's the other side of it.
Yeah,
people always get a bit worried. I don't know, for some reason thinking that Porsches are difficult to drive, which they're not. So you're part of you're a member of the Porsche Club in New South Wales. So you know Craig, who's been on a previous owner's story?
I do know Craig. So I know Craig quite well, actually. And we meet up at the Porsche Club drives and so on, and keep in touch on Instagram and so on. He's a very good guy, and he has his own story and a different car and so on, and we just enjoy, both being Porsche owners and having different models that we can compare and talk about. So yes.
Yeah, it's a good comparison, isn't it? It's a good comparison. So when what else was I going to say? So when I always ask this question, and we haven't finished the podcast yet, but I always ask this question in the podcast that people like to know, if someone's coming to Australia, which they can't, of course, they can't at the moment because Australia's locked out everybody. But if you're coming to Australia and you want to take your 911 for a drive, or you want to take your Boxster for a drive, your Porsche for a drive, what roads would you recommend to the listeners?
Well, I think we've talked about the Royal National Park going south of Sydney. You know, that is just a beautiful piece of road. And the other thing that's interesting about it is the changing topography and vegetation. You know, you can go down into dense sort of forest, or you can go up the top of the ridges, and you go, you know, around the beach and so on. And that's just a great drive on every level. You know, some good cafes and so on. The only thing that is a little concerning at times is that it's also very popular with cyclists, you know, who I think they look like they're training for the Tour de France, you know, but you've just got to be careful, because you can come around a corner and before you know it, there's a cyclist there. And there are a few guys on motorcycles that ride enthusiastically as well. But I think that's my favourite drive. The drive north, you know, up the Old Pacific Highway, there's a couple of great cafes there. There's Road Warriors and High in the Sky. That's really nice. And then there's the Putty Road, Bell's Line of Road as well.
I really enjoyed the Putty Road. You know, I've only done one drive on the Putty Road, Stephen. I think it was when I was back in Sydney with my friends, with Steve that I did a podcast with, and we did the Putty Road. I really enjoyed that road. I got to do it again. It was actually, and there was no traffic, you know, compared to when you go down, like, you know, the Royal National Park one we're talking about, when you go down south, you have to leave at the crack of dawn, because otherwise there's a lot of police, there's a lot of the cyclists, like you said, are just a nightmare.
That's right.
But the Putty Road was good in the fact that it wasn't as, the elevation didn't seem to change as much. It wasn't as exciting as when you're going down the Royal National Park and then you keep going up through Kangaroo Valley then and back around into Barrel. That's sort of part of that drive. But the Putty Road was still good. It was good that there wasn't much traffic. Yeah,
I agree. You're probably going to go a bit further on the Putty Road, I guess. You know, you want to head up to the Hunter Valley and so on. It's a great road. It's really, really nice. I agree, Michael.
Yeah, and I guess with all these drives, it's depending on how long you want to drive for, because the Royal National Park is a reasonably a good distance. I always find the old pack is a little bit, you know, you get there and then it's not enough. It doesn't feel like enough. But I don't think I'm going far enough, even on the old pack, or cutting in far enough, because I know that Steve said he went for a drive recently with his friend of his that just got a GT3 as well, that he went further in, and he said, oh, it's much better than where we go, because we always turn around a little bit too early, I think. But there's so many great roads to drive on. And what about is there any roads on your wish list if you went to Europe or something? Is there anything that you'd really like to drive?
Look, you know, you see these pictures of the Stelvio Pass and some of the roads around northern Italy, you know, around Bologna and places like that. I think that would be fabulous, you know, because you get the whole cultural experience as well as the driving experience. And, you know, around Croatia too, I think. I think that's where Porsche filmed their promo for the Boxster 25 down there in Croatia.
Yeah, you just reminded me of something, actually, and this is what I meant to say in the beginning, and I completely forgot. This year, as everyone knows, well, everyone, if you don't know, you should know, it's the 25th anniversary of the Boxster, and that was the other reason why I was keen to talk to you, because it is the 25th anniversary. They've brought out that anniversary model. Steve and I talk about that in Friday's podcast, in this coming Friday's podcast. I'm recording this one with you. It's going to be in a couple of weeks' time, but people would have already heard that one already. What do you think about that, the 25th anniversary Boxster?
Look, I think it's gorgeous. I think, you know, the 4-litre naturally aspirated motor is just a gem. You know, it's got all the goodies as well. Some people, you know, there's a few things on it. It's obviously a bit of a homage, you know, to the show car from 1993. But someone else commented, you know, that if there's a beautiful interview with what's his name? Grant Larson, I think, the American guy that was involved in the original design. And it's an interview at the Porsche Museum, you know, talking about the Boxster. And one of the things he mentioned, which he thought was quite different at the time, was the centre exhaust outlet. You know, he said at that point there were no cars had sort of centre exhausts. And it kind of surprised me that on the Boxster 25, they haven't got the centre exhaust. They've still got the two separate exhausts on either side. Yeah.
Okay, that's strange, isn't it?
It is a little bit strange, but I can understand, there are packaging constraints and so on. But I would have liked to have seen that. I think the colours are really nice. I do like the wheels. They're very different for Porsche.
Yeah, I think the wheels look good, actually. The colour. I don't know what that colour is. It's not gold, is it? It's kind of like a bronzy sort of gold colour. Yeah. It's not that Arum colour that they're doing on the 992s, but I think they've done a pretty good job of it, actually. I think they've done a pretty good job. It's weird about the centre exhaust, though, because my first memory of the Boxster is seeing one in, I think it was Elizabeth Bay in Sydney. And, when it came out. And the two things that I remember is, one, how wide it was. You know what I mean? And the centre exhaust. Yeah. For the time. And it was, it was groundbreaking. It was just completely different to anything else on the road. And that's... Yeah,
that's right. And in fact, I realised how wide it was. I was on a drive up the old pack and a fellow pulled in, another member of the Porsche club, in I think it was maybe about an 83 or an 84 911. And, when you park the Boxster next to the 911, you just realise how much the 911 has grown. It was smaller than the Boxster, actually, in every dimension. But it certainly...
I heard a fun fact the other day that someone was talking about. They were talking about Ferrari, actually, and it could have been Matt Farah on Smoking Tire, I'm not sure. But they were talking about the 328 GTS Ferrari, the 80s Ferrari. And apparently that Ferrari, you always think it's a huge car. You always think this Ferrari is a big car. It's the same size as a Boxster.
Yeah.
Which
that's
I find quite amazing that, you know what I mean? Like, you feel like they're two different sizes, but the Boxster is it's not a small car. It's definitely not a small car.
No, that's right. And I'm 6'1", and I've got to say, I have plenty of room when I'm driving. There's plenty of headroom. There's plenty of room side to side and in front of me. So it accommodates me very well.
I think Porsche do that well, though, don't they, Stephen? I mean, it is because you sit so low, your center of gravity. It is, they really do accommodate, tall drivers. Not like a lot of other cars, don't. They do actually accommodate tall drivers, and there's always plenty of adjustment, which is always good.
Absolutely, there is, and when the roof is down, your head's not sticking out in the airstream. It's very calm. So it is actually quite spacious. So, and I think part of that's due to the slightly lengthened wheelbase, compared to the 986 and the 987 and the slightly wider track. It is quite large.
I've only been a passenger in 986 and 987 Boxsters, and the one thing I notice is one, like you said, it's the sound, it's the experience. You don't feel like you're blown around. You know what I mean? It feels the position as a passenger. Even you feel in a really good position when you're sitting in the car. There's something really special about being in the Boxster. It is a special Porsche, that's for sure. All right, Stephen.
I think so. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share with the listeners before we go? We're at the hour mark. We always keep these to an hour, the owner's stories.
Look, I think I think there's a bit of a tendency for 911 owners to see the Boxster as perhaps the poor relative or whatever. But if you want a roadster, I don't think you can do better than that. And I remember reading in a Car and Driver, when they were evaluating the Boxster, the 981. They said, the straight line performance might not be supercar standard, but its cornering and its braking was GT3-esque, I think, is how they put it. Yeah. So it's, in terms of the whole driving experience, I think it's just great. I really, really do like it.
Yeah. And I think, like what you said, you wanted the manual, it's about getting the right spec as well. It really is. And, it's the same as buying a 911. It's about getting the right spec and getting the most out of that spec. You know what I mean? It's like the base Carrera is the poor brother to the S or whatever. It's not about that.
Yeah.
It's still a Porsche. It's still got the engineering. It's still, the history, the heritage is there no matter what it is. And that's what's important.
Absolutely.
And that's the most important thing. Stephen, thank you so much. Thank you for being on Owner Stories.
Thank you, Michael. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I think, the listeners, I know I get messages, a lot of messages from people. And, I know people that, the Boxster and the 911, it's normally the 996 and the Boxster is always in people's, when they're first, I want to buy a Porsche. What shall I do? Shall I go the 996? It's got issues. Should I get a Boxster? So it's always something that comes up. So I think it's helped people, having you on and talking about it. It does actually help the listeners, and people actually enjoy these stories of ownership. So thanks so much, Stephen.
No problem, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening to the PorscheCooled Podcast. That was Owner Stories number. Here we go again. I always forget number 20. Number 20. I should remember that. It's easy. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.